Hello and welcome to the PhoneGap and Intel XDK course by Eduonix. This course will be all about mobile web app development using web standards like HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS3. In Chapter 1, we'll basically discuss the mobile internet in general, including what a web app is, what a native app is, and the difference. And of course we'll talk about hybrid apps, which is basically what we'll be building. The apps will appear as a native app, but will actually be written in HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS. We'll use PhoneGap, and we'll also use Intel XDK to provide that native environment for us. We'll talk about HTML and CSS, kind of a refresher course. But looking at it from a mobile standpoint. Same thing with JavaScript and jQuery. Chapter 2 will be an intro to PhoneGap. We'll talk about what it is, what it does, the resources you can use, documentation, and we're going to focus mainly on Android development because that's what's hot right now. To build and deploy an iOS app, which is an iPhone or an iPad app, you need to actually pay a $99 fee, and you need a special code. So we'll be focusing on Android, but it really doesn't matter which platform we're aiming for because we can do it all using PhoneGap. But I will show you how to build with the Android SDK and the Eclipse editor. This was kind of the first way of developing PhoneGap Android apps, but it's a little tougher. You have to install a bunch of software on your computer. The more upgraded or updated method of building Android apps or any apps with PhoneGap is PhoneGap Build, which is at build.phonegap.com. And you basically just upload only your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and it'll spit out a native app file or an APK, for instance, for Android, and you could just install that right on your device. So PhoneGap Build is really the method we'll be using. So we'll also build our first app, which will be a very, very simple app, and we'll also look at how we can install that app onto the actual device. Chapter 3, we'll look at some of the PhoneGap location APIs. We'll look at the accelerometer, which will show us the acceleration of the actual device, turning it and whatever, throwing it up in the air, whatever. It'll grab all those readings for us. And that's used mostly for game development, where you would tip the device to steer a car or something like that. We'll look at geolocation, which is very popular right now. It will pinpoint a user's location, which could be used for unlimited types of applications. We'll look at how to get the latitude and longitude coordinates, and then we'll look at how to actually paste that on a map using Google Maps API. And again, we'll test this on the actual device. Chapter 4, we'll look at camera, capture, and contacts, which are three of the PhoneGap APIs. We can use the camera API to either take a picture and use it in our app, or we can actually grab a picture that's already on the device and use that. With the capture API, we can capture images. We'll also capture audio, and then we'll deal with contacts. We'll be able to add a contact to our device using our app. Chapter 5 will probably be the longest chapter of the series. We're going to learn all about file and storage using PhoneGap. We'll see how we can we'll create an app where we type in the URL of a file and we can download it right to our phone's file structure or our device's file structure. We'll be able to create and write to a text file on the device, and we'll also get into jQuery Mobile, which is a mobile web framework which allows us to create nice buttons and links and inputs, and also allows us to use Ajax navigation for multiple pages. We'll build an application that will read the directory on the device. It'll read all the folders and files and display them. And then we'll create a little task manager project, and we're going to build it once using the local storage API, and then we're going to build almost the same exact thing, except we're going to use SQL. We're going to use a web SQL database, which is pretty much like a client-side database. In Chapter 6, we'll get into Intel XDK. It's a cross-platform HTML development framework, HTML5 development framework. We will install it. You can actually install it as a Chrome extension. We'll look at something called App Starter, which is a GUI tool to create an app with buttons and input and different kinds of elements. And we'll also look at the App Framework, which is another mobile framework, kind of like jQuery Mobile. So we'll get into that. And we'll also look at the AppMobi APIs. Intel XDK was actually first known as AppMobi, so it uses AppMobi in the APIs and in the methods. And we'll look at geolocation, camera, accelerometer, and contacts. Now I know we looked at these in PhoneGap, but now we're going to look at and see what the difference is from Intel XDK to PhoneGap with these APIs. And we're going to build a single application that will do for all these four operations, and we'll deal with these four APIs. In Chapter 8, we'll test our application or project, and we'll use AppLab to do that. I'll show you how to go to the App Store and download AppLab and then set it up so we can actually test on your device. Next, we'll look at some app debugging features that Intel offers us, so we can actually open up a console and it'll show all our console logs and errors. And then finally, we'll look at submitting apps to the app stores. Now, we're not going to actually do this process. We're not going to submit our app because it's really just a learning tool. But I will go through the documentation and show you the links and process of how to do that. So that will be it. That'll wrap up our course. There's a lot of information packed in here. I'm really excited to get started, and I hope you learn a lot from it.